Hello and welcome back to the Blend podcast. I'm your host, Mike Ruff, and today we're joined by the brilliant Nikki Cowan. In this episode, we're diving into the MOT slowdown and how 5 years on, the COVID hangover is still hitting independent garages and could continue to cause problems for longer than you might think. Fair warning, we do go pretty deep into the challenges, but because we're getting into it with Nikki, we're balancing some doom and gloom with plenty of humour. Nikki, welcome onto the Blend podcast.
Cheers, Mike. Nice to be here. Well, I assume it will be. It's a bit early to say, really.
Well, let's see how it goes, shall we? Let's rewind a bit before we get into the main topic of this episode, because I always find this fascinating. How did you first get into the motor industry?
It's a bit of an unusual one, this one. So back in the day, many moons ago, I used to be on TV. I was a presenter. I'm a bit embarrassed to tell you about it, and to be honest with you, Mike, I'm annoyed with you for bringing it up, actually. I don't really like talking about it. It's not really, I think it's a bit crass. So anyway, I'll tell you all about it. So in my 20s, that's when I started. I used to host all sorts of quiz shows, dodgy late night phone-in things, not Babe Station, for anyone out there thinking of that. I worked for the BBC for a bit, but all I really wanted to be was Jeremy Clarkson. I don't mean a racist misogynist. I wanted to host Top Gear. That was my thing. And I sort of realised my ambition when I became the presenter of a show called Fifth Gear. Now, I don't know if you know Fifth Gear. It was on Channel 5. It was like Top Gear, just, it was very similar. It's just without an audience, I think would probably be the best way of describing it. I actually won a competition called Fifth Gear Idol, which was it was to become the next presenter, or at least I thought it was. So it was hailed as the search for the new presenter, and it was voted for by the viewers, both of them. And I was very excited when I won. I was rushed off to film my first ever car review for the show on location. You've heard of Silverstone, the home of Formula One. It wasn't there. But just up the road is a place called Birmingham. So I was given a Ford Mondeo to drive around in for a day.
Now, we couldn't possibly bring up Nikki's TV pass without a little clip, could we? So here's Nikki in fifth gear mode.
When they said you've won Fifth Gear Idol, I couldn't have been happier. What car am I going to get? I said, is it going to be a Ferrari like I've got posted on my wall, a Lamborghini, a Bentley? No, instead they gave me a Ford Mondeo Estate. Try it, they said. You'll love it.
Question is, Nikki, did you ever get that Ferrari?
Cut a long story short, they told me that at the end of the filming, it was a great segment, but I don't have the experience working with cars as much as I had a passion for it, and I needed to get that experience, they said, if I wanted to be taken seriously. So that was my only avenue as a car presenter, as it were. And I left literally that moment. I left Birmingham, I left North One Television and went straight to London, where I live. And I walked into Car Giant, which was at the time anyway, Europe's largest car showroom, car supermarket, and we were selling 1,000 cars a week at that time. I think there's more now. And I asked for a job, and that got me into the motor trade. And that was a long time ago now. That was over 20 years ago, it feels like. And I went from Car Giant. I ended up selling high-end cars in Mayfair, in Park Lane, showroom for Stratstone and one of their flagship stores. I was there until the financial crisis, the first financial crisis. I think we're on 7, is it 8? But yeah, 2009, and I left there and went to Mercedes, which seemed like a bit more of a sure thing. And I was at Mercedes-Benz for the best part of a month. I wasn't, should we say, Mercedes enough, as you probably are already gathering. So I left Mercedes, and again, cut a long story short, I started my own business. So in 2011, I think it was, it was, I started a company called Sell Your Car UK, which was effectively before your motorways and your car wows and all of that stuff. All there was at the time was part exchange and we buy any car. And I had this idea that we could create a new way of selling cars for people, act as a broker, if you like. So I started Sell Your Car UK. I think that was a bit ambitious, if I'm honest. I think if I'd have called it Sell Your Car My Road, would have been probably a bit more sort of manageable for me. And it was an effort. It was a task and something I'd never really done before, but it took off, and I ended up selling people's cars for them. And most of my days were spent in garages. I had a little network of independent garages that used to afford me the luxury of working from their premises whilst they worked on cars that I was bringing their way. And so a big shout out, I guess, to Dave Brock from Premier Auto Care, gave me that kick up the bum. Alex Fagenbaum, who's no longer with us, and Alex had a garage in Mill Hill called GDK Garages. It's been there now for over 40 years, and he passed away sadly a few years ago, in 2018. In fact, so it's more than a few. Blimey, time flies, doesn't it? And I bought that garage. So I've worked on both sides of the glass, Mike, as I like to call it. So I've worked in the showroom and I've also worked in that workshop as well. I've never been a mechanic. I never want to be a mechanic. I leave that job to the professionals. But I have always been, now for 20 odd years, been working on and around cars. And that's how I found my way into the motor trade. Obviously, I went back to North One Television and I said, I'm now experienced. Can I get a job on your show? Fifth Gear was cancelled in 2015, I think it was. That's great. Top Gear's also now been cancelled. The only thing that's funny enough not being cancelled is probably Jeremy Clarkson, which is ironic. So that's how I got into the motor trade, and I'm still not being taken seriously enough to be a TV presenter. But what can you do? Here I am. I'm on your Blend broadcast, so maybe I've finally made it.
No, you have. Fifth Gear's loss is the Blend's gain. But you're right, it's definitely not the usual way, and especially having started out behind the camera beforehand. Most garage owners, as we know, tend to begin as technicians, head down under the bonnet, and then just kind of end up running a business almost by accident. There's no single route in, of course, but do you think the one you have taken has given you a unique perspective on the running of a garage?
It's a difficult one, that one, because there's no good way to get into this industry. That's my opinion. Most people get into it because they are fed up with the status quo. They're a good mechanic working at a great dealership or garage, and something happens, and they don't feel valued, or they're given. They've got ambition and they're not being able to fulfill it, and that's certainly the case for me. That's not making me unique. It's just the fact that I came in the way I did. But I think what's important to sort of state here is the fact that times have changed. So in the past, I think historically, running and owning a garage has always been a very, I'll say exclusive, but I think that's the wrong word. It's been a very lonely, that's probably the best way of putting it. It's been a very lonely experience for many garage owners. So Alex, who was my predecessor at the garage I now own, Cartopia, who passed away, as I said, he wasn't much of a sharer. If he had a tool and you needed it, unlucky mate, go and buy that. He invested in that tool, you go and invest in that tool. If he fixed a car, and may he rest in peace, he was an absolute legend and he's a lovely, lovely man, but he was still part of that generation of garage owners who didn't share their knowledge, didn't share their tools, didn't share their time. They'd made it, so if you wanted to make it, go and do it yourself. And I think that's changed, or it's certainly changing. I've found anyway. I think we're now part of a much more sensible generation, and no offence to all those older garage owners, but hopefully they're seeing the mistakes of the past themselves, and we are being much more inclusive. I think that's where I was going with exclusive. We're being much more inclusive. We're not so alone. We're now part of communities. You talk about the Blend, for example, is part of the Garage Hive community, which is an amazing, immersive group of garage owners and mechanics and technicians who share their problems. First of all, God knows we've got enough of them. They share our solutions, we share our knowledge, our experience, and it's making our lives easier, it's making our lives better. So I think that, yes, I had a unique entry into this market, but I think any technician who's taking that step from the tools to the office is going to have as hard or as a bit much of a struggle as anyone else getting into this business.
What do you think was the trigger for change then, from feeling like a lonely, isolated business to suddenly being part of this bigger network of garage owners all facing the same challenges?
That's a really amazing question, because I don't think anyone's really given social media any credit for anything for a very long time, and rightly so. It's an absolute disgusting mess. But for all of its horrendous traits of ruining our children and their generation, which it sadly is, for us as an independent garage network, a network of completely individual businesses, social media has really pulled us all together. And I think that's the key, is that we've kind of become a much more connected society, for better or for worse. And there have been a few organisations that have embraced that. So Garage Hive being one, Autotech now, part of LKQ Euro Car Parts, are really pushing in that direction. Techman, there's lots of things out there. What's the other one as well? Tech Topics, where you can share problems and people are happy to give you solutions. The forums that have been going for 20 odd years now, people have been going on there with their problems, and you look at people like Paul Griffiths up at Elite Land Rover in Scotland, genius, absolute genius Land Rover tech. He's shared his knowledge, his experiences on the forums. Matt Cleveley, EV, the king of EV at Cleveley EV, what he's been doing on the forums for Teslas and Nissan Leaf community, it beggars belief. So we're all, I think now, because of social media, we're much more comfortable sharing our problems and also therefore getting our solutions as well.
Speaking of change, I gather there's quite a bit of that going on your end at Cartopia at the moment.
So not really. Everything is changing. Everything is changing, and it has to. I've got a lovely expression which I'll share with you, thanks for asking, which is that this industry is like quicksand. That's how I see it. You have to keep moving forward, because if you stand still, you will sink. It's as simple as that. And I don't think we're alone in that respect. The face of the world is changing. Goodness only knows what's going to be on the headlines tomorrow. We've got, at the moment, at the time of recording this, we've got all the problems with the tariffs coming in. We've got some crazy legislation that's being passed globally. The change is happening all around us, and if we don't change, then we will, as I said, we will sink. We're seeing lots of different ways of doing that, and I think our industry, Mike, is particularly affected. It's easy for me to say that because I'm in it, and I'm sure there's people out there in other industries that will say, "Oh, you think your industry is bad? Oh my God, you should see what we're doing. Coal fire, we're no longer selling coal." But the fact of the matter is, you talk about electrification. You talk about, I wrote a thing recently about the COVID MOT hangover. We are still feeling the effects of COVID in our industry, and I know, again, there will be lots of industries out there that would be saying the same thing. Good for them. The fact of the matter is our industry is being hit from all sides, and if you don't change, if you don't keep moving forward, you will sink.
It does feel like the pressure's coming in from every angle at the moment, doesn't it? So with that in mind, how are you moving your business forward?
We've started a 6-month trial in-house of moving to fixed price servicing, which is something I have always run miles from. I've had my garage for 7 years, and in that time we've always been a bespoke garage. Somebody comes in with a Mercedes E220, we'll price up their service using, we're a Shell trusted garage, so we use Shell oil, so we'll price up the correct oil for that car. We charge by the litre. We'll use genuine parts where necessary, otherwise we use MAN filters, Bosch filters from LKQ, from Euro Car Parts. But every job is specific. Now, obviously, if somebody else comes in with an E220, you can expect the price to be the same. But if somebody's coming in with a BMW 420, it's going to be different. And likewise, if somebody's coming in with a Ford Focus 2-litre, it's going to be different. And what we've tried to look at is I think we've kind of gone down this avenue, really. We've been looking at our diary, how busy it isn't. It would be important to say it isn't, because you hear of people all the time with their 2 weeks, 3 weeks lead time, and we're a much more responsive garage than that. We've got 4 bays, 6 technicians. We're in a high street location in northwest London. So we have people pulling off the motorway on the M1 and coming to us with an engine management light. We have people pulling in with a flat tyre or a bulb that's out. And we also have people who come in on the back of an AA truck because the clutch has gone or the gearbox or whatever it might be.
And you're able to cater to that?
We can, but I don't want to. This is the issue. And certainly we are moving into an era of being, we are already in an era, of being sued, litigation, a litigious society. It's terrible in other parts of the world, and I fear it's going to go that way here, especially the worst thing as well. And there's not a garage owner who, when I say this, isn't going to have a chill run down their spine, but the Google review. We are so scared of the Google review. And I say that knowing that a bad one-star review is actually quite a good thing sometimes, because you write a nice response to it, and anyone with some common sense will read both that and your response to it, and their one-star review suddenly doesn't look so one-starry. What you end up looking at is you're thinking to yourself, oh my God, that person sounds like a bit of a nutter. That's sort of your general response if you do it right. Obviously, if you've got a sea of one-star reviews, maybe time to change the company name, but see, or perhaps do things differently. But the point is, whichever works for you. The point is that we are in this society now where it's difficult to do everything right. So what we now do, and I'm sure I'm not alone, is we do health checks. And when I say we do health checks, so we have a 20-point check of lights, brakes, tyres, and a few bits and bobs on the side, battery health check, always. And we're doing it for two reasons, three reasons. The first reason is we're not stupid. The second reason is we want to make more money. And the third reason is we want to look after the people who come into our workshops. So I think that when we're doing it like that, with those changes that we're putting in of making sure that we do a health check on every car, if somebody does drive in and say, my front headlight's not working, and I'll give you a good example. We've got a very lovely customer, a lovely woman by the name of Anais. She drives a Mercedes E-Class. That car is her life. She ferries her kid to school in it. She ferries her mum around. It's everything to her. And she came in 6 months. I know it was a year ago. God, how time flies. She came in a year ago for a bulb. There's a video on our Facebook of her engine being taken out of her car. We found an oil leak coming from the upper PAM, and you can't fix that without taking the engine out. And she asked us to do the job, and we found that oil leak because of a health check that we did when it came in for a bulb. Now, not every garage can turn that job around, but God knows if we weren't doing that health check, I'm not saying her car would have blown up, but we certainly wouldn't have got that job. She wouldn't have been in a position where her car is not leaking oil. So these health checks, and that's a very extreme example. You might just find a car needs a tyre. You might just find that a car needs a windscreen wiper. These things afford us the ability to give a much, much better level of care, a much better service, and ultimately, say it quietly, but make more money. That's why we're here. That's why we're here, everyone. It's not to fix cars, it's make more money. But that is true, because we have to tell our customers, if we're not making money, we're closed, and good luck, go find another garage. So ultimately, the changes that we're making are making sure that we rinse our customers for all they're worth. Oh, sorry, I read that wrong. We need to make sure that we are getting as much business out of our customers' vehicles as we can, fairly, obviously. And we need to make sure as well that we're busy. Now, you asked that question, which is really valid. I talked about Matt at Cleveley before. There are garages out there that you literally are booking your service in next month. You are like the main dealers. And as great as that is for the diary and for your own income stream, it's not great for customers. Mick Shakeley, absolute legend, talks about ranking your customers, Mike. So you probably talked about this on other podcasts. In fact, you have, I know. So when you rank your customers, the idea is that you get rid of the bad and you embrace the good. And unfortunately, not all of us garage owners have the luxury of being able to rank our customers because we don't have the time we don't have such a busy diary that we can afford to be picky. So for us, this change, this movement towards fixed price servicing, the idea is that we are just going to fill the books, fill the diary. And it's a 6-month trial. We're going to see how it goes. I expect it to work. We've already massively changed another change we've made is we've massively changed our booking process. So you can now go onto our website at cartopia.uk. Feel free to rinse whatever you want from it. Another change we're making is we're moving over to Garage Services Online. They're going to be making our website. I saw what they did for Intelligent Autos up in Gateshead for Gary Wood, another genius. And I spoke to Gary, and it was a no-brainer. So we're now moving our website away from an in-house built mess over to a very beautiful, brilliantly linked to SEO, brilliantly linked to Google Business website that's going to drive a lot of traffic onto that portal, onto that site. And it's not just there it's not an art gallery. I'm not just having it there so people can look at it and go, well, isn't that pretty? It needs to have a function. So we have built online booking now to an extent that, again, I've looked at Emma Lindley's offering at Lindley's Auto Centres, Tim Benson at Oldfields Garage. Both of them have been amazingly helpful in giving me their time and their experiences. So we have now built this booking portal at Cartopia. You can book a free health check, a free brake check, free tyre check, free battery check. You can make an aircon service, special offers are on there. Book a fixed price full service, minor service, and we've built it so that literally if you've got a Range Rover, a Jaguar, a BMW, a Mini, a Mercedes, I've gone to town. This wasn't an overnight job. This has taken a long time to come to fruition. But these are the changes we have to make because, as I said, if you stand still, you will sink.
You mentioned earlier about the COVID MOT hangover still affecting the industry. Can you tell us more about that? Can you believe it's been 5 years? Is the hangover, as you put it, starting to ease off yet?
Oh man! So first of all, for anyone who doesn't know what COVID was, yeah, I'm only kidding. Yeah, the COVID hangover, and again, you know, you talk about other people in other industries saying, "Oh, well, it's bad for us as well," and it is. COVID is still a major problem for our industry, and I don't think people are really aware of just how much of an impact it's having now, and is going to have. Again, you know, this is something that's you need to be aware of this. You need to make your changes now if you haven't already. Because this is going to be around for years. So I was very lucky to, I always study the numbers, Mike, a bit geeky. You get into it and suddenly next thing you know, it's 2:00 in the morning and you've read 400 pages on the SMMT website. But yeah, so the SMMT is the Society for Motor Manufacturers and Traders. They specifically look at data coming out of main dealers really, and repair centres as well, but mainly brand new is what they look at, and when you crunch their numbers, it's quite scary to see the drop that we are part of. You know, we're the aftermarket. We look after the vehicles after the dealers have lost them, and that might be because the cars have sold, or it might be because the person who's got that car is no longer under warranty. I mean, how many times have we heard that as in our garage industry, where somebody doesn't realise that they could have brought their car to you in the first place. But the issue is, when you look at the numbers of cars sold from 2020 onwards, it is scary. There's no other word for it. Actually, there is a word for it. It's terrifying. It's terrifying because the numbers are through the floor. I don't want to scare people, but maybe it's a good thing if I do. So in 2016, and this is where Jipper starts their data analysis. So in 2016, 2.7 million cars were registered brand new in that 12 calendar months. Just under 2.7 million in 2016. In 2020, 1.6 million cars were registered new. Now, the reason that's important, and just to dive into those numbers a little bit more, if you go and look at the SMMT figures, they'll show you that in April of 2020, which for those who have heard of COVID will remember, that was the month that the first lockdown kicked in. So it was March 23rd, 2020, we all closed. So this COVID lockdown hangover which we've kind of coined here, that stems from that closure. Now, some garages didn't close, and full power to them. We did, and I'm not alone in that one. There was a day, I think it was the 20th, I think 23rd, it was probably the 20th of March, where my phone rang off the hook. It was non-stop. The phone was ringing non-stop. We had people on hold, waiting for people who were on hold, who were waiting for people who were on hold. And every single one of those phone calls was to cancel an appointment. It was just, it was terrifying. There's that wording. And so for us, it just made no sense to stay open. Now, I'm not alone. We all took that opportunity to do some home improvements. We put a new resin floor in, we cleaned the place up, we painted the walls, we made it look nice for when we would eventually, please God, come back, which we did. And a lot of garages did the same. But the problem we had, and still have to this day, is that we work in a circular annual industry, and our diary is usually very solid, rock solid. And when the government, in their infinite wisdom, said that garages had to close, what that did was it stopped every job that we would normally do in an April from coming back next April, and the April after that, and the April, and so on and so on. And what we're finding is that most people will find that April is very quiet anyway, always has been. It's the Easter holidays, people go away. Also, you've got to look back to the time of when was it, 2001, when they introduced the biannual new registration. So, Mike, you're too young to remember it, but there were cars that used to come out with a single reg number, so PRST, all that lot, and you'd get it once a year, and the industry wasn't very happy about it because they weren't selling enough cars in later parts of the year as they were in March. So anyway, in 2001 we had the 51 plate, and then we had the 02, 52, 03, 53, etc, etc, etc. So this meant that, brilliant, we're now selling cars in March and September, but historically, again, March would be this massive rush, everyone wants the new reg, but then April would be quiet because the rush was finished. So April has always and notoriously been, in the independent garage sector, a difficult month to make money. And when the lockdown happened, it became even harder. And it wasn't just that MOT cancellation, and also the fact that they gave everyone a 6-month extension, which you'll remember as well. It wasn't just those things that meant our diaries were now going to be quiet in April. We were then hit with the closure of the dealerships. So they weren't able to sell cars, weren't able to register new cars. And this then had the knock-on effect. So that I've said those numbers before, only 1.6 million cars sold in 2020. In April of 2020, in April of 2019, Mike, in April of 2019, 160,000 cars were registered new in the UK. 160,000, April 2019. In April 2020, 4,321 cars were registered. Now, if you've got a 20-plate car in your workshop in April, I mean, go and buy a lottery ticket. You know, the chances are probably better. It is insane that this is the kind of market that we have to make money in. So on top of the MOT extension, the closure of our workshops, the closure of the dealerships, you then think, well, okay, well, it's only going to be a year, it's going to be a problem. But no, it wasn't, because then you had the semiconductor crisis. So you'll remember you couldn't get a new car because all the companies that made all the things that make the cars, they also shut. So now there's no parts for cars. There's no semiconductors anyway. So this was what we were being told, but it meant that you couldn't buy a new car, which pushed the price of the second-hand market through the roof, which then stopped people from changing their cars because they'd get a lot for their car, but they'd have to spend a lot on another one. This has all come together to make it exceptionally difficult every year. Now, that is going to end at some point, but the question is when, and the answer to that is in the numbers. So when you dig into those numbers, when you dial down into them, you see that the only time numbers came back to what they used to be like before COVID. The only time we hit numbers that are kind of around the 2019 sort of numbers is in November of 2023. Now, that means that it's going to be this November now. It's going to be around about November. So I'm looking at monthly data from SMMT. So November 2023 is when those cars were new. So those numbers will be back to normal, if you like, in November 2027. November 2026. That's when those cars will be up for their first MOT. March 2024, when the new regis came out a year ago, was also a good period. We're sort of hitting around 2 million cars being sold a year in 2024. So we're getting there. But we're not going to see those cars. So don't get excited. Don't think that's brilliant. They're coming in then. They're not going to come to us. Those cars are still under, a lot of them are under service packages with the main dealers. If those cars have a problem, they're under warranty. If those cars, well, they don't need an MOT unless they're a taxi, and who wants that business? So some people will, but so these cars, they're not our customers. Our customers are the people that bought their cars in 2020, 2021, 2022, because those cars now are 3 years old, out of service plans, out of manufacturer's warranty, due their first MOT. But sorry to be the bearer of more bad news, when you actually look at the numbers of those 3 years, 2020, 2021 and 2022, if you look at the JIPA numbers, they're saying that only 1.6 million cars a year were registered. Now you compare that to 2016 when 2.7, and 2017 as well, 2.6 million were registered. That's 1 million cars a year that aren't in the car park out there. Now that is 3 million less cars to go around between all of us independent garages. But, sorry, more bad news. That's also 3 million less cars that the main dealers are working on. And their overheads make my overheads look like I'm running a lemonade stall on the side of the road. How are they going to pay their staff? How are they going to pay their rent and their rates and their overheads? And the answer is our customers. And what we're seeing as well, and I urge you as a listener to phone your local dealer and get prices for work. Give them the reg number of a car that's on your workshop floor today. Give them the job that you're doing and ask them how much they're charging. You will have a heart attack. We had a customer recently who complained because we were only £40 less than the local VW dealer to do a major service, including plugs. We did and pollen filter as well. We were doing front brake pads and discs and 2 new front tyres, and the 2 new front tyres were Continental, I believe. So they were, what they'd put on at the dealer, and we were only £40 less. Now my argument was, we care more and we're cheaper. You should be coming here. His argument was, yeah, but it's a VW stamp in the book. Again, my argument was, what book? You don't even have a book these days. But the consumer has this mentality, this ideal, and we are now fighting them. But the point is, this is what we're up against. We're up against fewer cars in the market, massive competition from the big boys, the diary already quiet, the fact that our customers are not coming in through no fault of their own, and you've still got your bills to pay, your staff to pay, and it's not fun.
Yeah, it's a tough cycle, isn't it? Fewer cars, fewer customers, and increasing costs. I realise this isn't a particularly easy listen, but it is the reality, and you can either choose to act on that reality or bury your head in the sand. Nikki, you're choosing to do something about it.
Yeah, 100%. Mike, 100%. This can't happen anymore. I'm only now really kind of opening my eyes to this issue and looking at the ways to correct it.
So what are you doing now to ensure that you're busy this time next year?
This is nuts, everybody, but just go with it, okay? We are offering all of our customers who have MOTs later in the year, all the way up until March of 2026, a free MOT if they do it in April or May this year.
I can almost hear the gasps of shock from everyone listening.
Yeah, I mean, look, people out there are going to go, are you stupid? Yes, I am. Have you not worked that out yet? The fact of the matter is that I have customers who have MOTs that pass or fail, right? This is how I've got to look at it, and I have looked at it. And this is not my main strategy, I've got to tell you. This is just like a let's try this as well. Because I think, it was Henry Ford who is attributed to have said that half his advertising works and half his advertising doesn't, and he'll pay anyone any money they want to tell him which half is which. That's a great quote. And this is the thing. You've got to throw a lot of mud at the wall and hope that some of it sticks. So one of the things we're doing, and we're promoting this through social media and through every single customer that comes into my workshop for anything, I'm offering them a free MOT. Now, the idea of it is that you are going to have 12 months of peace and happiness, and your car doesn't need an MOT for 12 months. Well done to you, it's done. If it fails, don't worry about it. It doesn't actually override your existing MOT. Your current MOT certificate is valid until its expiry date. So you're still able to tax it and drive it and insure it. You are legally allowed on the road. But you will have a failed MOT on the record for that car. But that's a good thing, because we've just identified something on your car that is dangerous and needs to be attested to, needs to be rectified, which you wouldn't have known about for a year. Now, you don't have to do it today unless it's a tyre that's got a cut in the sidewall or a bulge, or your brake pads are illegal and low. You don't have to do it today. If it's a bulb, we'll do it now. Push it down the road. Budget for it. Save up. Your suspension arm's got excessive play. Fine, you've still got an MOT. Come back to me in 3 months' time and I'll do the suspension arm. The benefit of this idea, though, is that in April next year, we're going to be busy. We're going to have lots of MOTs that have to pass, have to have the work done there and then. Now, I'm not necessarily going to be doing their service. Their service can still be whenever their service was. So now I'm going to see them twice a year. And in my opinion, if we get a 10% uptake of that, and we are getting it. I've got an Audi TT RS that's coming in on the 28th of April. She's getting a free MOT. Her MOT runs out in November. In November, her car's coming in for a service. So I'm not losing out here. This isn't about, and the cost of an MOT is the time it takes and the very small amount of money that we pay the MOT license, the DVLA, DVSA for the MOT test slot, which is about £2. So at the end of the day, this for me is not lost revenue. This is actually future-proofing the business for next year and the year after and the year after that. And this is just one discussion we had that's turned into some business. So yeah, there's a stupid idea.
Well, let's make that judgment in a year's time, Nikki. It's certainly out there. So just to be clear, you're saying that even if a vehicle fails its early MOT, the driver can still use their car legally as long as they haven't got any dangerous faults, because the current MOT remains valid until it expires.
So this is what we have to explain to our customers. Legally, you could face prosecution for driving that vehicle on the road because something on that vehicle is, I don't want to say unsafe, but is not legal. Now, if you're driving down the road and you've got a split windscreen wiper and your car's failed because it's not clearing the windscreen effectively enough, and you continue to drive down the road with that, and I'm not going to say you, Mike, but let's say somebody does do that and they end up having a crash because they couldn't see, and the police investigate the vehicle and it's got a split wiper blade, yeah, you're in trouble. You are in trouble. But change the wiper blade. And it's a difficult situation because the same would be argued if you didn't have an MOT. If, God forbid, somebody had that accident and it was investigated and it was determined that that person was driving without due care and attention, they were driving a vehicle that was not fit for the road, they would be equally culpable as if they had the MOT and they knew it because it was written in black and white.
Nikki, we've covered some of the challenges pretty extensively in this episode. So any advice to those listening that may perhaps be feeling a little overwhelmed by everything at the moment?
Don't be scared of it. Change has always happened. We had the diesel change. Everyone started buying diesel, so you had to learn all about DPFs. Then the AdBlue thing kicked in as well with DPFs. I mean, God almighty, what a nightmare that is. How many people out there part of the DPF doctor network, because you've got to embrace the change and you can't know it all. All the diagnostic equipment we've had to buy over the years, people now investing in Pico. You've got to embrace the change. And this is a doom and gloom episode. I am absolutely passionate about us all knowing the risks and being able, if you don't know there's a lion behind that door, you're going to open the door, aren't you? So let's at least know what's behind it and arm ourselves with what we need, so that when we do have to go through that door, we're going to come out the other side, and the lion will be a good customer who'll bring his car to us every year.
Talking about customer service, Nikki, I wanted to mention that if there's an award for the most engaging garage answer phone message, it would have to go to Cartopia, I'd suggest, because I listen to a lot of these messages from a lot of different garages, and yours is brilliant.
Yeah, listen, I think I'm not alone in this. We all in this business, anyone listening to this podcast anyway, I think, treats their customers how they want to be treated. And we've all had that phone call where you answer, especially main dealers, where the phone is answered with, your call is important to us, please hold the line. And it's like, you get that horrible, if it is important, then why aren't you picking it up? Why am I on hold for 11 minutes? This is ridiculous. I thought I'm important. So for me, first impressions matter. And we've always had, and I change it regularly, not that regularly, but I change it regularly, that when you phone us up, you will be greeted by me, effectively on a recorded call, a recorded message saying thank you for calling. I kind of feel like I want you to phone us. I don't want to, do I spoil it? All right, so basically, I'm actually planning on doing a Jason Statham one, which effectively goes, it answers the phone like this, it goes, what do you want? That is my Jason Statham impression. I'm very proud to have got that out there. But yeah, the idea is that someone phones up, that first impression, the phone is answered with me going, hello, you're through to Cartopia, you absolute legend, stay on the line and we're going to put you through to the workshop. There's something like that. And thank you, yes, I'll take that award if it's going. But I think this is the key, isn't it? This is what I'm trying to get at, is we're a main dealer's worst nightmare. They can't do that. They can't have that moment of connection. They can't make that rapport. They have to be very professional, and then it's put you on hold for ages, and then some voice comes in and goes, have you asked us about our fixed price air conditioning service? No one wants to listen to that. All you're thinking is, I'm on hold so that you can sell me stuff, and I want to speak to somebody. So just play nice music, and if you do have to have a message, so our message, if you're on hold with us, I think our second message goes, you must have the patience of a saint. I promise you we're coming. Just chill. We'll be there as quick as we can. And that's the message. I'm not trying to sell you a bodywork inspection or a free health check or anything. Just chill. We're coming.
Nikki, you've been absolutely brilliant. Thank you for sharing everything so openly, and I'll look forward to seeing you at the Blend on Saturday the 18th of October.
Likewise, Mike. It's been a pleasure chatting with you.
That's all for this episode of the Blend Podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you've enjoyed the listen, please do subscribe on your podcast app. Recommend it to someone who might find it of interest. And if you have a moment, leave a review. Your support really does go a long way. In the next episode, I'll be joined by Hayley Powers from the IMI and Andy Crook of Got Boost Training. See you then.